Is it on? Is it on? Wonderful. So, thank you. I don't know who wrote that stuff. It's semi-true. Um, First thing I want to say, and it wasn't planned, was that you can see there in the left corner, nice reinterpretations in software architecture. I want to thank Alin Roșioru. Where are you, man? There you go. My presentation looked, as Mr. Banish said, just some text. Now, after an hour of Alin's magical touch, it looks like a presentation, I was told. So, thank you for that, Alin. What I want to talk to you about today is something that thank you. Everybody's touching me. What I want to talk to you about is reinterpretations in software architecture, which will be a quick look over what I think is a cyclic nature of how we do architecture, how we do software, how we do software paradigms in general. And like any good presentation, we're going to start with a rant. Or at least that's what I consider a good presentation. So at some point, I was minding my own business while I heard some guy who actually wrote System Design Interview, so he's a good guy, saying that gRPC is the next thing in terms of inter-process communication. And it's an improvement over REST, and we should all start using gRPC for our stuff. Of course, that got me extremely mad. I was very upset. I can even, I'm breaking voice right now because I was so upset. Why was I so upset? Because I knew that 30 years ago, I'm that old, 30 years ago, there was a thing called Corba. I was talking to Jeff yesterday, and I said to Jeff, I'm going to use the word Corba. Nobody will know what that is. Does anybody know what Corba is? Wow. Ah, Dacian. Yeah, I believe that. I believe Loli, yes. And I believe Rila, yeah. Okay, so 3 people. So that didn't mean that I wasn't upset. I was still very upset, although I knew that people will not know about it. And it doesn't matter if you don't know what gRPC, even if what gRPC is or Corba is. What matters is that there are 2 technologies that are trying to solve very similar problems. So I was so upset that I said, let's go to the internet and find an echo chamber. And of course I found it. And I found the Stack Overflow rant where the guy says, I feel we are going backward. Am I the only one? I didn't, this is true copy paste from there. Am I the only one realizing, or am I getting too old? Something that I was also questioning myself. And of course, there was a guy saying, me too, and he gave other bunch of examples. So I was ready to put it to rest. We are going backwards. So problem solved. gRPC is just Corba on, how should I say, watered down Corba. But thinking more, and having more conversations with other people, I realized that maybe something else is happening here. We are living indeed in a cyclic world, and the cycle, if I can abstract it, is something like simple to complex to magic, and then there is a reaction to the magic or to the complexity, and we go back to simplicity, to complex, and to magic again, and the cycle renews. While we will see in the examples that I will give you that it actually gets more and more refined. That's the idea. So from a pessimistic view that I had in the rant, I started to see some kind of a light. And why is this cycle happening? I thought more about this, and I came up with 3 forces that are driving the cycle, and the 3 forces that are trying to actually reach an equilibrium. And I think they are simplicity, efficiency, and control. Simplicity is self-explanatory. You want something to be simple. When you're coding, you don't want to do closure. Yeah. Yes, one guy. Yeah. You want it to be efficient. Efficient meaning either in terms of development speed, either cost, either performance, some sort of efficiency. And control, you want to be able to impact, whatever you want from the framework, the tool that you're using. You want to give you control, not relinquish control. You want to have also a lot of control. And I believe that in this cycle, we are ever searching for a proper equilibrium between these three forces. And Mazzillo got all happy when I said this, and he said, yes, and you're going to say, well, you're going to choose two of the three. Yes, two of the three usually. But what I find is most likely, and as the framework matures, unfortunately, it's usually one of the three. We're going to see it in the framework. So I don't have too much time here. As I was developing this presentation, I realized I would need like the first iteration, it was like 35 minutes. But I will try to plant an idea in your head to be aware of this phenomenon. So let's go to the first example. And the first example is languages. So we're going to start with C, C++, and we're going to go all the way to Rust a little bit. And I'm looking at two attributes of languages. Memory, you can take other attributes, but I would take memory and expressiveness. And if you look at memory, you can see that on the left side you have C, C++, where you would have a lot of control over the memory, the pointers and all the troubles that ensue. And then you had a reaction where Java appeared and said, I will have a garbage collector for you and you will not have to worry about the memory. Everybody was extremely happy. And then what people observed, people like Boogie, I said I will yeah, because you, yeah, exactly. People like Boogie would say it's not expressive enough. So we need, you would say that, yes. So then Scala appears, which I mark with red there because I consider it an insane level of expressiveness and ergo magic. And I put /closure just to annoy you. Okay. And then you have Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, I want to say, which are trying to relinquishing some of the control that you have on the left, some of the expressiveness that came from relinquishing the control in the first place, are trying to meet somewhere in the middle and be an equilibrium between these three forces. Although, so simplicity, efficiency, and control, although it's clear that you have not so much control in a JavaScript or Python. I know you can go in Python and do C stuff, and I know you can do, now you can start threading JavaScript. Ooh, I'm not impressed in terms of control. Okay, so Go appears, which tries to get back some of that control. Stars appear, yeah, so pointers. And even more, if you go to Rust, to Zig, to others, they are looking for even more control, but they are balanced. They are not as insane in terms of control and what would come with control as C, C++. So what's actually happening? So at the languages level, I believe we are trying always to find this equilibrium between control and efficiency. This is always the first thing that comes to mind. And efficiency, in this case, really means performance. But in order to have control, you need to have pointers, you need to have threads, you need to have this kind of constructs which are notoriously difficult to operate. If you want expressiveness, you need to have fluent APIs, functional crap, boogie, and that's also getting complicated. If you want even more efficiency and even more expressiveness, you're going to go, I'm just giving some examples here. There are a ton of examples. You can go to template metaprogramming, to curiously recurring template patterns and things of that nature. And nobody will be able to read the code ever. But you will be a happy boogie. So effects are, of course, complexity. This is always about, I can hear you, you know. The effects are always complexity. You gain control, you sacrifice simplicity. and it's an imbalanced situation. While the guys that are going to the right, like, I'm not a big fan of Go or Rust or whatever, but I see that they are trying to achieve that equilibrium. Food for thought, consider the fact that on the left you had OOP relevant, while in Go and Rust it's bye-bye. Wow, why? I don't know, is it dead, maybe? So, another example, frameworks. This, this really cracks me up. So, servlets on the left, because it was said I started with Java at some point, so servlets are all the rage. If you don't know what servlets are, it's perfectly fine. Think about an Express application where you have a post, put, get, handler, whatever. That's exactly what you would have in servlets, and you have an object where you dump your output. Yeah, pretty simple. It's exactly the same thing. Only that in servlets, they were in a class. That's the only. So they are basically the same as an Express application. Functionally the same. You have a stream. I mean, you have an object where you can dump stuff, you can stream to the stuff, and you have some handlers where you respond to the classic HTTP verbs. It wasn't good enough. Frameworks like struts appeared, which were, come to think of it, beautiful compared to EJBs, who were an abstraction madness. I didn't put it with red because other red will come. So that was not even that bad, in my opinion. And then Spring appeared as a reaction to EJB. In Spring, it took me a while to have an epiphany that we are actually doing text programming with layers and layers of abstractions. It took me a while to understand it, but that's what we're doing. And then I put it with red. I'm sorry, hot takes. I should have made a disclaimer. There will be some hot takes. The three magical manifestations in the world right now are Spring Boot, Django, and Ruby on Rails. What's funny is that Spring Boot appeared to solve problems from Spring, which is, it's magic on steroids, and Ruby on Rails really takes the cake. Is Common here? Python people? Nobody will say, I'm a Python guy now. I'm like, no, we do have one guy. So Django, magic, yeah? Yeah, he's gonna say. If you name a variable hello in Django, maybe missiles will be launched. I'm exaggerating, of course, to make a point. So as a reaction, I believe Node appeared to all this stuff, and pică chestia asta. Uite așa. Nu-i bine așa? Okay, so Node appeared. What do I mean by Node? I mean actually Node/Express and simplifying the whole magic, getting rid of magic. It's a snapping effect where you get rid of the magic. And then, funny enough, not good enough, Express, Nest.js appears. And now, these are the two screenshots. It was funny when I was thinking about this that you won't see it that big. I wasn't expecting it to see it that big. But if you imagine it smaller, you would say it's the same language, same framework. At-rest controller that deals with cats. Get mapping, it's the same thing. And I asked a friend of mine, Berlovan, at some point, I said, why would I write this when I have that? And he said, correctly, because you don't know Java. So if you don't know Java, you're going to use the one on the right. Okay. That's, I said that's interesting. So what's actually going on here? From my point of view, it's a search for rapid application development, because what do you want from these frameworks? You want efficiency in development. How quickly can I get the stuff out the door? And it's still me. Come here and touch me again.
No, leave it out, please.
Okay. Early. So, yes, we are looking for development speed. That's the efficiency that we are looking for. And what's actually going on? In a framework that doesn't give you that many batteries included, you want more batteries included. As you get more batteries included, you get more magic. It's getting unwieldy. The magic gets unwieldy when you see a Spring stack trace with proxy of proxy of proxy of proxy. You say you are going to quit, and you quit. And you go and you do node and express. Of course, there are benefits. You get guardrails. In Spring, you can't really move. You're on a track, of course. But the effect is always magic. More and more magic as the stuff is doing more and more for you. And you're going to end up in debugging nightmares. I spent countless hours debugging Spring. Countless hours. And not understanding anything while I was doing it. And one interesting thing here, while talking to Marius, was that, of course, the effect is that we want to remove completely the magic. And this is something that I will address in the conclusions. We should actually strive for a golden path, not be very binary, A versus non-A. Because A made us feel pain, like a Spring Boot that is crashing all over the place. We say, oh, no more magic. And we jump completely into Node, where it's very, very little magic, unless you consider JavaScript magical, which, yeah. So we should actually try to stay on the golden middle path, from my point of view. We'll touch on this at the end. So all these frameworks, from my point of view, we will lose more and more simplicity and control, because in order to modify some behavior in the way that the stream is, for example, an HTTP request cycle is happening in Spring, if you want to modify it, you're gonna suffer immensely. If you want to have control in the way that they are doing it, so you're going to sacrifice simplicity and control to get efficiency, because you just write that controller and you're up and running. All right, so it's happening basically the same thing, but looking at speed of development. Dum, dum, dum. Now, this one, it will be a lot of hot takes. So where do we actually render, and where does the state actually live? This is the funniest one. We started very simple. It's about the forces between, do we do server-side rendering, do we do front-end, front-side rendering? How client-side. Client-side rendering, there you go. So we started with server-side rendering. I wouldn't even say simple HTML served by a server, server-side rendering, but technically it is. Then CGI. Aline, you ate my arrow here. So CGI, PHP, server-side rendering, it's clear. And XHR is put there as the milestone. From my point of view, it started as the ability of the browser, because that's the idea. As the ability of the browser increased, we're going to be able to move more to the client-side rendering. And then these are with bold, but I don't think you can see them as being with bold. Yeah, we do. So Flash, Applets, and Silverlight, they were wonderful. Ooh. Yes, I believe they were wonderful, but they were magical. They were too complex. You could do anything you wanted. You had a canvas. Think about it. Even in Flash, even in Applet, in Silverlight, it's a pinnacle. You had a canvas where you could do whatever you wanted to do. Whatever you wanted to do, even too much. If I put ActiveX here, I could maybe do even too much. So it was very powerful, but it was too complex, too magical, not enough portability. Apple killed them. That's another stuff. I put GWT with red because Boogie liked GWT. So I put GWT with red because for some moment, like a month, I really thought, I remember like 10, 15 years ago, I really thought that we reached an equilibrium, but we didn't, because it was also too magical, and also you would lose control. People would actually write JavaScript separately and inject it into the GWT-generated code to make it work. Okay, so SPAs appeared, which is the pinnacle of client-side rendering, but it's not good enough. We have next, server-side rendering, roar, and now HTMX, server-side rendering. Victor is the HTMX zealot? Yeah, there you go. We have to have Victor. It's server-side. It's absolutely server-side rendering. Right. So what is going on here? Now, if I would know, I would tell you. So what my take is the following. We are we are really far away from an equilibrium here. And I can't help myself when in PHP we would say that UI has access to the DB and it's bad. Yeah. Now we are saying, I know via various layers, various niceties, we are saying that again the UI has access to the DB and it's good. I don't know. I still keep looking at Pfeiffer. I believe that Pfeiffer is an SSR. Are you an SSR? No. So whatever. But for the purpose of the presentation, you are. So so now SSR says the new SSR. Next says UI has access to the DB, and it's a good thing. It's hilarious. So here, from my point of view, we are far away from an equilibrium. It's not actually even, and I'm happy to discuss afterwards, not even very clear what are we actually looking for. Initially, I thought we were looking for efficiency. How fast do we render actually the stuff? We are looking for clients being able to see, clients meaning Google, the Googles of the world to parse your pages. It's a mess from my point of view. That's why question marks there, rich experiences, control, unclear. Happy to discuss afterwards. Another one, which is more architecturally oriented, it's something that I call patterns. Now, and this shows more and more the fact that it's not necessarily a cycle always. It's actually iterations and refinement, but you do need to know where they are coming from. That's my one of my theses. Think about it. How do we actually structure our architectures? You started with monoliths with modules. I called that like your PHPs. Yeah? Then monoliths with classes, so very OOP-ish. And you go to NTR architecture, and you have service-based architecture. So when we're talking today about microservices, there was a time when we called them service architectures, service-oriented architectures. Maybe they were not so micro, but they were service architectures. And OSGI put there with red. I would love to talk 2 hours about OSGI and why it was so great and the best thing and why it failed. It failed miserably, although it was a pinnacle of service-oriented architecture. But it was too complex, too magical, not balanced enough. And then we had a reaction where we are actually reducing the way that we are doing service-oriented architectures to very simple common denominators. Like, to give you an example, because I don't have that much time, think about the name server. In an architecture of distributed systems, you need a name server, yeah? So in OSGI, for example, there was a guy that was the name server. In Corba, there was a guy that was the name server. And it gave you a lot of flexibility. In a Kubernetes thing, it's DNS, which is very interesting. We reduced it, we boiled it down to something as simple as possible to deal with the complexity. And what are we actually looking for? We are looking for modularity in all of these structures. We are looking for modularity, easy. We are looking for simplicity. That's what modularity translates to, which means, of course, cohesion, so tight cohesion, loose coupling, which is an absolute balancing act, and it's very difficult to obtain. And Kubernetes says that we are meeting in the middle. Kubernetes is not at all easy. If you think it's easy, it's not. It's very difficult to maintain a Kubernetes cluster, and it's trying to offer an orchestration where we have a distributed system in check. But actually, we are losing the simplicity factor, which you would have in terms of orchestration, you would have in a monolith. So Again, the three forces, again, an iteration, a cycle that is happening. Yeah, okay. So this slide my wife said to take out because I'm going too fast through them, so I kept it in because she's not here, that's why. So there are other cycles. No low code, low code. This is something that Boogie actually recommended, and I thank you. Another one is cloud, mainframe, on-prem, on edge. We're leaving the cloud, we're again on-prem. Clear? My beloved one where my wife said, you have to reduce the number of acronyms. I'm sorry, I can't. I will just say that, and you removed my underscore here, Aline. This is actually, think about it, out of all these technologies here, this is the simplest one. Hands down, the simplest one. Why? That's why it's so successful. It's relinquishing efficiency compared to all of the others, efficiency, and it's also relinquishing some of the control. And it's the least efficient. But it's the most simplest. That's why it's so successful. That's why JavaScript is so successful. So, hot take. Some ideas, conclusions, because I don't have time. Is there an inflation of tech and of cycles? Will you be able to find other cycles? Absolutely. And that's a good thing from my point of view, and it's a thing that you have to live with. Are we reinventing the wheel? Are all of these reinventions of the wheel? Yes, and it's a refinement of the wheel, and the wheel is most often reinvented with better materials. You have access to better hardware, better browsers, better technologies. We understood why Corba was so complicated, so we did gRPC, which is simpler. Or it shed some of the things that Corba was bringing, and it was too magical. There is often a revisit, a need for a cycle, because we found out more stuff that warrants a revisit. A versus non-A, the epiphany for me is that it is very often driven by human behavior. Like I said, because that thing is magical, the next thing must not contain magic at all. And that's wrong. You should try to find an A prime, from my point of view. Not just negate completely A and go to non-A. And we do that. We do that in all wakes of life. I put this question here because it's trendy. Talk about AI. And also because, again, after a talk to my wife said, what if AI will start doing these cycles for us? We'll iterate through that. Yeah? It's trendy to ask this question. I have no idea what will happen. Happy to discuss. Finally, some recommendations. What's the point of all this? The point is to make informed choices, know where we've been, know something about where we've been. We have like 30, 40 years of relevant history, and it will help us to make informed decisions today. You're not just gonna jump on. I'm sure somebody will do the next Corba if they don't know that Corba existed and it failed. This is something that I say in all my presentations, like I have one every week. Don't fall in love with technology, comma, it will only break your heart. Yeah? Your beloved closure, Boogie, is just a blip on a cycle. Yeah? And of course, truism of the day, how do we build the future if we don't know the past? Am I on time?
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Vlad. Please take a seat.